I don't think.
Maybe.
Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the roll, please.
Mayor Bailey?
Here.
Mr. Bateman?
Here.
Mr. Blair?
Here.
Mr. Butler?
Here.
Mr. Ori?
Here.
Mr. Phelps?
Here.
Vice Mayor Weisgerber?
Thank you. Vice Mayor is present via Zoom. Welcome, everyone. With us tonight, we have our Clerk of Council, Misty Brent, Assistant City Manager, Tom Smith, City Manager, Dave Kennedy, our City Solicitor, Joe Braun, Chief of Police, Sean Ray, former Councilman Todd Osborne, and the President of the Little Miami River Chamber Alliance, Cece Collins. We also have our Director of Finance, Michelle Burdett, who I saved for last, because Michelle, about 2.5 years ago, we had a vacancy as our Director of Finance, and it's possible I begged her to take over that role. Said at that time she could only give us a few years and intended to retire. Well, she has gone above and beyond that and has announced her retirement for the end of 2020, so we will certainly have much more fanfare later, but I didn't want that to go without thanking you for that and without at least acknowledging that you have given us that notice and thanking you for the time that you've given us. I'm sure you loved that. She'd rather just sit over there and be, I know. All right. All right, so first order of business, we have the 2020 Lewis G. Rockwood Community Service Volunteer Award. And if we could have the Bersanis join us at the podium, please.
Take off our mask.
What did he ask? All right, so there's not a whole lot that it says about it other than, but there's plenty that we'll be saying about Mark Bersani, so it's okay. The Rockwood Award seeks to recognize the time and accomplishments of volunteers serving the city. So obviously, our winner this year is Mark Bersani, but I'm going to have, he was nominated by two individuals. First, there might be some duplicity, but that's fine. I think that, is that right? Duplicate testimony, something, but that's fine because doesn't hurt to hear it twice. So let's first start with Tim Butler, if you could read your nomination.
It would be my pleasure. Mark Bersani. Mark is a ceaseless advocate for preservation and aesthetics along the Little Miami River. He is an active and fervent supporter of local businesses. Mark is also involved in a project which offers canoeing and kayaking opportunities to inner-city youth. Mark is a true representative of the think global, act local mentality. Mark is always thinking of ways to improve the city. He is well deserving of this honor.
Mr. Ori?
St. Mark Bersani, owner of Loveland Canoe and Kayak, for his timeless efforts in helping Loveland businesses since 2013 with events and for being involved in the downtown business district. Mark has mentored many young employees through his summer hiring. Mark and all the Bersanis all right, care about Loveland, the river, and our residents. His retail store offers canoes, kayaks, and accessories, along with offering demos, fishing tournaments, trade shows, which brings lots of people to our community. Thank you.
So I think this was a fantastic choice. Without further ado, congratulations.
I'm humbled and honored. Really nice to win an award like that, and I think it's important to acknowledge that I don't win these awards. It's really a team effort. I've got a great family. We fell in love with Loveland the minute we came down here to buy the business, and we've fallen more in love every year. We feel very fortunate to be here with a great community of other business owners that supports one another, and we absolutely love living on the river and enjoy that view that we have out the back. But I want to thank my wife, my daughter, my staff who worked really, really hard this summer. These kids were amazing. We pivoted our business 180 degrees, and they responded, stepped forward, and we ended up having our busiest summer ever, despite the fact that we had to do half capacity in shuttles. But everybody just worked really, really hard, and we had a lot of customers that came down and just thanked us for all of Loveland for being able to be outside, to be on the bike trail, to visit the downtown restaurants. A lot of people that came, it was the first time they experienced it, and I think everybody probably saw that downtown. So we're hoping that they become lifelong Loveland customers. So thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
You don't have to stay, Bersanis. You're allowed to go. We won't even say anything about it to make it obvious. Exactly. All right. We have open forum. We have two individuals that have signed up. Todd Osborne, you're first.
Todd Osborne, 1100 Sunrise Drive. I'm going to talk a little bit about downtown traffic, and I'm sure this is going to be brought up during the public hearing. Prior public hearings have brought this up, and other individuals have brought this up over the years, so I'm going to add a couple of cents. I think that Loveland needs to recognize that there is a traffic problem. And with that said, several years ago, more than several years ago, Council created what is basically a seating license in front of Paxton's, Tano's, and Bishop's Quarter. And that was before the fire. Since the fire, all of those restaurants along the block to our west, minus Paxton's, have increased a second floor or even a third floor. I think it's time to revisit bringing back home the licenses and narrow the sidewalks, bring those back to what they used to be, and basically make 2 lanes of traffic, eliminate the parking on West Loveland Avenue from the bridge to 2nd Street, and make 4 lanes, 2 lanes east, 2 lanes west, from the bridge to 2nd Street. Also, from 2nd Street west, you make a continuous lane from southbound 48 to West Loveland Avenue. For there to be a turn lane at the foot of the bridge is almost, I'm amazed there hasn't been a head-on collision yet. I've been almost clipped several times. I know other people have been almost clipped several times. So, along with this suggestion, eliminate turning left at the foot of the bridge, either east or westbound, and make a common direction from Paxton's. If you're going to, if you're turning left from westbound West Loveland Avenue, to make 3 to make a right and a couple of lefts. Likewise, coming east off the bridge, turn at Paxton's to go to the Eagles or park for these establishments to our west. But something's got to happen in addition to the parking lot that's going to be built. On a side note, the signs for the parking lot's not present at the moment.
What? I'm sorry.
The signs pointing to the,
Temporary parking?
Yeah.
They're done. Okay.
yeah. But anyway, I think that there needs to be some discussion on the traffic because it's not going to stop. Warren County's going to still build out. Clermont County's still going to build out. And without a second bridge around here, there needs to be some sort of a medical term, angioplasty to downtown's artery to get out of here. Because a half-hour wait, that's not Loveland, that's Westchester. And we're Loveland. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Ms. Collins?
Hello, my name's Cece Collins. Kind of wearing a couple hats tonight. I'm the president of the Little Miami River Chamber Alliance here in Loveland. And first I wanted to say thank you again to council for coming to the food truck grab and go. It was great to have you guys as part of the event. A little different this year, so we look forward to hopefully having you back again next year. So thank you for that. And then I also wanted to share via the chamber that we are planning to do Christmas in Loveland on December 18th, 19th, and 20th. So we're going to extend that out. And the reason for that is just so that we can spread more events out, and not just physically, but with time. And we feel that, there'll be lines for things. So the businesses really felt that was a good move. We met this morning, and they really wanted to add on a couple of days. So you'll be hearing more details on that, certainly on our website, and hopefully the PR marketing committee will help get that out as well. So the other reason I wanted to kind of change hats is I sit on the lead committee, which is Loveland Education for, I want to make sure I get this right, Loveland Education Against Alcohol and Drugs. It really was started in the school, but it's a community committee. And so we're always looking for folks that want to get involved. However, October 26th through the 31st is Red Ribbon Week, and it's Be Happy, Be Safe, and Be Drug Free. So I'm going to read just something really short here. This year's Red Ribbon Week theme will help amplify the campaign's mission to encourage children, families, and communities to live healthy, happy, and drug-free lives. It also serves as a reminder that we are all empowered with shaping the communities around us through positivity, bravery, and strength. So I have information on that if anybody's interested. We'd love for anybody on council to get involved with the committee. We've asked businesses to light up their business red in honor of the Red Ribbon Week. The school is doing some different things. All the schools actually through Loveland City are doing different things, such as lay off drugs and all the kids get a lay, and different outfits and things that they're allowed to wear special that week. So we hope it goes well. I'm just one person on the committee, and I wanted to share that with City Council and the City of Loveland. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next item is minutes from the September 22nd, 2020 City Council meeting. Are there any additions, changes to those minutes? We have a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Phelps made the motion. Mr. Ori seconded. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bateman? Yes. Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Mr. Phelps?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Weisgerber?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right, next are the minutes from the September 29th, 2020 special City Council meeting. Are there any changes, additions to those minutes? Not, can we have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second was Mr. Butler. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Mr. Phelps?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Weisgerber? Yes. Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right, next is the public hearing, so just sort of an explanation of how that will go. We'll open the meeting, or the hearing, I'm sorry, and then Mr. Kennedy will explain. There is a memo that explains the proposed sale further in the packet, but he's going to go ahead and explain that memo and the particulars now. We do have a couple speakers signed up. Each speaker has 5 minutes for your time, so if you have, what we would ask is you get your 5 minutes uninterrupted. If there's any questions you have in those 5 minutes, you can pose them, but we will not answer them during those 5 minutes. At the end of what your statement, you can have a seat, and if we can, or so inclined, then can try to answer that question at the end of those of your presentation or of your statement, and then we'll close the motion. So that's how we'll do it. All right. So first, would someone please make a motion to open the public hearing? Mr. Butler.
I move that the council have a public hearing for the proposed sale of 9.8389 acres of city-owned property on Butterworth Road.
Is there a second?
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Mr. Phelps?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Weisgerber? Yes. Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman? Yes. Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Mr. Kennedy.
So, just a little history. I don't want to drag on too much of some of the history. And my history of the city goes back to 2014. A lot of the activity, the creation of the TIF, which is both what we call the Christman Farm, which is a city-owned property, and it consists of 9.8 acres, and also the Crane property, which consists of 16.1 acres. Those are located in a TIF. A TIF is a tax increment financing where the city can get advances on anticipated future taxes to use for projects. Basic sense is downtown is in a TIF. City received advanced taxes of which went into the development of Loveland Station. That is now sending in revenues into the city. When they did the TIF with the Crane property and the Christman Farm, the thought was that there would be a development, primarily on the Crane property with the access through the city's property, the Christman Farm. Ultimately, that was what we call SPD 14, Special Planning District 14. It was a development that was originally going to consist of 70 attached units and was ultimately reduced by City Council to 58 units. Again, this was before my time, but I understand mainly the main reason that the developer walked away is the off-site cost. Water is one thing. Sewer is all the way down on Kep Road, so it's a pretty significant run up to even to the corner. So a little more history. So I got here in 14, and at this point in time, I can honestly tell you since September of 2014 until 2 weeks ago, we have always received interest from developers on the properties. They're sort of married together. It's hard for the Crane property to be developed without the Christman Farm. They're one and the same. Lots of conversations with the Crane Farm. I will tell you, and I speak on behalf of this city council, we received quite a few proposals that would never have fit well in that area. Equal number of units, often attached. And as we would go through them and they would get through various steps and processes, some of them came with dollar amounts, formal LOIs, letters of intents submitted to the city. At the end of the day, I do want to say I'm not an elected official, so you don't have to vote for me. But it really, truly was, Dave, that we're not putting that up there by Brandywine and Butterworth. We're not putting that type of product up in that area, and that is as honest as I can tell you. We even had a proposal once for 111 units. It was about $145,000 more than what we're selling for 111 units that were basically townhomes in sense. Again, the city had no interest in trying to put a product like that. This has gone up and down over the years with a lot of developments. So what happened that I think sort of upped the ante? My message to council was, I don't know how I'm ever going to get a true low-density product up there unless we get creative and we figure out a way to run the sewer up there. If we run the sewer up to that property, it's a public sewer. It would go up State Route 48 and go up a little bit on Butterworth. The city would own it. The city would maintain it. The city can use it. But we could recoup our money through an assessment on the property. We would put assessments on this development. This has nothing to do with Butterworth or anything. Every person who would buy in this development will, just like anything, this is what you're going to pay for your lighting district. I don't know what their HOA fees are going to be. It's not really our concern. Here's what you're going to pay over 20 years to pay the city back for running the sewer up here. Once the agreement was that that's a smart way for us to move this project forward, myself and my staff went back to the numerous single-family home builders that we had talked with. We made it very clear we were not going to do an apartment, a condo, a townhome type project anymore, and said we want low-density, detached, single-family that mirror the size, if not less density, than the two neighboring subdivisions. Out of that came, we got down to basically two proposals. And the proposal that came to us just recently, and that is presented to the city currently, is 30 lots up to 35. I believe it will end up staying at 30. 20 on the Crane parcel. Those are what they will classify as the estate homes. Starting at $850, most of them will get up into the $1.2 million range. All of those are 3/4 acre lots. Those are large lots, 110 to 120 foot wide lots, all side entry garages, which is a certain appeal. That particular section of the development was submitted to the Cincinnati Home Builders Association to be considered for the 2020 Homerama show, and it was recently selected. So 2022 Homerama show, and it was recently selected, and I've received verification on that. So what the proposal of the plan would do is the estate homes would go on the Crane parcel. What they call the estate empty nester homes, which start at 550 and go up from there, would be on the city parcel. Their proposal to do the project would be they would not start on the city parcel until after the Homerama show is over. Then one of the things this does is, I think it meets my challenge and my staff's challenge from council, is give us a product that can fit, that fits up there, that works in harmony with the two surrounding subdivisions, Brandywine and Butterworth. I feel as a staff we check that box. From a financial standpoint, $350,000. Their original offer was $150,000. My comment was, I will not take that to City Council. That is at $350,000. Considering we're taking care of the sewer line, it seemed like $150,000 was too low. Especially, of course, and the residents will be paying off the assessments. Just so you know, those assessments, it's pretty clear. They come in to Michelle, and it shows each property, and it goes right back into the sewer fund to those funds. If we met the challenge of council's task for me was get us a product that we would be proud of, I feel like, I know people are going to disagree, but I feel like I've reached that product, especially with what else we were looking at. And then from a financial standpoint, because it's a TIF that went in place probably formally in 2008, it to this date has produced no money, obviously. Vacant land doesn't produce TIF. If Loveland Station never happened, it wouldn't be producing TIF money. So the debt service, though, as you can imagine, the bankers want their money. So every year, the general fund has been transferring money into the recreation land TIF to cover that fund. And we keep track, the lady over there keeps track of that to the penny. That current amount of money is $636,710. That money needs to go back to the general fund. And then we have to finish off our debt service, which is $347,000. So based on the calculations, the need to pay back the general fund, the need to finish off the debt service, and then get the additional TIF revenues that once they can come in, they can be used for a variety of projects. They can be, I don't want to start saying projects because it's wide open. We could make improvements, obviously. There's some slippage along Butterworth. It's a wide range. It can be citywide. My estimate, based on at the end of 2037, the TIF ends at 2030. At 2037, all taxes go back to the way. Everyone gets what they're supposed to get. These are sort of like supercharged taxes at this point, 7. So I followed the bouncing ball of how we would get the money, how it would come in over different periods of time, how the TIF would keep increasing. The TIF goes up as more homes are built and the value is set. How we pay off the debt, how we're paying off the general fund, and at the end of the day, the city would net around 1,470,000 in total TIF revenues after the general fund and all the debt service has been paid off. So if that was the other challenge is I have to make the city whole financially with this development, I think we've met that challenge. The other process was will this be a product that I think will benefit the city for the 2020 Homerama show, I think, just started and ended. Believe they go from about a Wednesday to a Sunday. I think 2021's in Anderson Township, and they'll soon be announced in the 2022. So I feel like the product meets it. So from a zoning standpoint, that SPD 14, it no longer exists. If you read any of our city's SPD regulations, an SPD only has certain numbers of days, certain types, certain periods of time that they must do certain things. Obviously, none of that's done. That is no longer SPD 14. The city cannot slip this into any kind of SPD without going through the SPD process. That is impossible. It reverts back to what it came in when it was annexed, which is RLD, and that's not it. So they now have to go for a formal SPD process. They have to have, just recently, this city council added a hearing to, an additional hearing to the SPD process. So they have to have multiple hearings in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission. They have to lay out everything that they will do in this development, what the entry area is going to look like, where the sidewalk's going to be, everything. That is then recommended by Planning and Zoning Commission, makes a recommendation to this body, more public hearings, where they then allow the public to see, okay, this is what we're doing time-wise, and that process, when they come to city, anytime somebody comes to City Hall and says, I want to do an SPD rather than a straight regular zone change, we say to them, be prepared, it takes about 6 months. And I've only done one in my time with the city, and it's the River Ridge Apartments, Deer Ridge up on Loveland Deer Road past Kroger's, that one on the left, that took about 6 months. So it seems like a pretty good period of time. So the total revenue to the city would be the $350. It would be the impact fees that we receive per home, so that'd be about $30,000 in impact fees. And then, of course, over time, ongoing, increasing TIF revenues to the city. What we do, which we've done just recently with the sale of the White Pillars home, and recently of the sale of some vacant property in the Heights, is that we transfer the property to the CIC. It's an arm of the city. Then they would work out the deal with the organization that would be purchasing the property, CB Butterworth LLC. I will be honest with you, there's a little bit of an expediting this process because I've ran some sewer lines in my time, and it is not an easy process. And if I have the goal, if it's on me to after the zoning, if everything is approved, we need to move along with the sewer proposals. So that's pretty much what I have. If you didn't get to see anything, you can go to the city's website. I laid in as a if you go to the agenda, you can see my memo outlines the TIF revenues. It also gives you the preliminary layout and the style of homes that are anticipated to be built, the estate models and the empty nester models. My TIF, just for the record, my TIF numbers are valued all at the starting number, 850. So that is how I make it conservative. I'm keeping the TIF number low by only saying 850 when that's where these all start. So I anticipate that the TIF revenues will be higher, and that would be more money to generate to the city after that. So I care about what the surrounding communities get up there, and we met with people, and those were not good products. I don't know, my personal thing, I don't know how I could, after almost 6 years of looking at this property, I don't know how I would end up with my personal opinion, and it's just my opinion, is a better product for that area. Low density. What does low density mean? Decreased impact on traffic and quality homes that helps the two surrounding neighborhoods. So I think that's pretty much what I have, and if you go home and feel like you have a question, I like to think I'm one of the more accessible city managers around. I welcome you to call me, and I can email you. All of this is public record. I can send you all of this information. I can give you what I anticipate the timeline will be, when the various public hearings would be. But at this point, I have another job, which is trying to move this along. So,
And as Mr. Kennedy mentioned, we are transferring this to the CIC. That actually is the only thing we're doing tonight, is transferring the property to the CIC. At least that's the only thing on the agenda that we'll be voting on.
yeah, they serve as our agent. And to be honest with you, why does that work better? Because if the city has to put this out for public bid, we have much less control over the product that gets to go in there. It's the same reason we did with the White Pillars. We wanted someone to go into the White Pillars, the most historic home in the city, who knew what the heck they were doing when it came to restoration. The CIC has that ability, the city does not. Transferring this to the CIC after we've worked to get a good product is the way any city would handle this type of transaction.
All right, so let's bring up the first speaker. I don't want to mispronounce. Bethany, is it Wigand? Wigand.
So I just want to thank you guys for hearing from us tonight. I do live in Butterworth Glen and have been a resident there for 5 years, and that is why I came here to speak. While I appreciate that it is a low density and not 111 units, really it needs to be no density. And that is because we haven't solved the traffic issue and the infrastructure issue that we have off of 48 and off of Butterworth. To come to work downtown, I commute downtown, currently working from home, it is almost 20 to 25 minutes in the morning pre-COVID. So if we're even thinking about putting any kind of development up there, we really need to think about those of us who have already lived there, who have invested and wanted to live in Loveland. And I actually grew up here. Born and raised, actually born on Valentine's Day, raised in Loveland, Ohio. I don't know if I get much more Loveland than that. But I wanted to live here, and we have to fix this problem before we start adding more and more people. If you're talking even 30 units, that's 70 cars at minimum. If there are multiple millions, I'm guessing that's multiple cars at each one. We can't sustain that. I mean, I'm tired of sitting in my car 20 minutes just to go downtown. That's a long time just to get through downtown Loveland. So that would be the first thing, is before we add any density, we need to solve that problem. The next part of this is, I heard about construction, right? We're now going to give them the sewer line to help them so we get the right product in there. That's great. That means more construction for those of us who live there for however many years, which is only going to add to our traffic problem. In addition to the traffic problem with vehicles, we have a massive issue with biker safety on 48. During the nice weather, there are tons of bike packs, 20, 30 plus bikes that go up and down 48 and Butterworth that we're swerving around, and I hear the sirens. I hear the nasty accidents. So again, before we go trying to put the right product, let's solve the issues for the current residents like myself, so that when we do add it, we're not impacting my quality of life, and I'm already a paying citizen and have been, right? The other side is, I had read that originally we wanted that property also to be considered, those 9.8, for recreation for Loveland, for those of us who live on the Warren County side. I do not have a park I can get to easily. You cannot walk downtown safely. There's no way I would put my body on 48 to get down here to avoid traffic and enjoy the parks that are downtown. Why can't we use that property to make the lives better for those of us who live out there by putting in a park, giving us some recreation so I don't have to spend 20 minutes going through downtown to get somewhere else in Loveland to have recreation. So those would be the things that I would ask to be considered. Unfortunately, it sounds like a decision is already being made and things are in the progress. I understand we have to transfer, but if it's already been submitted to Homerama and approved, this sounds like it's already done. And I think there needs to be a lot more considerations before you all go off signing on behalf of all of us. So again, thank you for your time. I appreciate the consideration.
Thank you. Todd Osborne?
I'd like to incorporate what I spoke on during open forum into this public hearing. I'll add to what I've said. I sat on council when we bought the property in 2007. It was slated for future recreation. It was not going to be fields. It was not going to be courts. It was going to be walking trails or a dog park, or even an idea that I brought up several times about a cemetery, because you can't die in Loveland and be buried in Loveland. The traffic is a concern. Regarding this property, it was slated to be the recreation end of it. There was an acre or so carved out, and it was going to help pay for the initial cost. But then the economy tanked, and so that project, the goal was for $200,000, and I believe it sold for $102,000. The property was used once for, I believe, Hurricane Ike for our ash borer quarantine. So all the debris in Loveland went into that park, that property. I believe that a lot of what was just discussed can happen at the same time as the sewers are being put in and the homes are being built. It's an evolution. Homerama was in this city once. That's Claiborne West. And it was successful, and those homes are quite valuable now. And it was a good, positive advertisement for Loveland. Was there pain? Oh, yeah. We saw 100-year-old trees go away. But on the flip side, we now have a really nice subdivision on both sides of Lebanon Road. Traffic can be contained. The bicyclists can be contained. I think this is a good project for Loveland. That property, the Connor Crane property, is set for sale forever. It's been at least 15 years that it was for sale. So something had to go in there. I would propose that for future expansion, annexation in Warren County, that council mandate or planning and zoning mandate that green space be provided. I think it's mandated, but I think that a park be mandated for that area. I think that you're going to see properties along Butterworth and 48 go up for sale. There's plenty of acreage. The builders can afford an acre or two for a passive park. This is a good thing. I'm glad to see it happening. I'm sad that it's not going to be recreation. That was the intent, but on the flip side, the city and the school district, once this TIF's over, are going to receive a ton of money in taxes. And that's a good thing for both the city and the school district. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Osborne. All right, that's the last speaker. Does anybody on council have anything they want to add before we close the hearing? Mr. Butler?
Yeah, Dave, if you would, because it's confusing to me and I'm sure to members of the public, could you explain kind of in layman's term how this TIF works and why under this proposal the city receives in excess of $2 million over time? If you could just kind of lay that out for us.
Well, the TIF is based upon what would ultimately be around a $25.5 million valued property. Because it's a TIF, certain taxes are held back. School district is made whole. So the city is receiving a greater volume of taxes during the period of it. Theory being, when the TIF is over, we've used this as a tax incentive similar to what we do when we give a tax incentive in the Commerce Park. We give a tax incentive to McCluskey Automotive's headquarters. He pays minimal real estate for X number of years, pays significant income tax to the city. Everyone else is held back, Hamilton County, the school district. But at the end of the day, they are then get their money when the CRA is over. So there's various entities, typically not school districts, that are held out of the tax distribution. There's, obviously I wasn't here, but there was a deal made for who would get what during the process. And then, but it is considered will you take a back seat knowing that if you take a back seat now, something later is better than nothing now, because this nothing, it's producing zero. So it is a very high value. So the TIF is, by having lesser units and higher value prices, we're equal to what a TIF would have been for closer to 60 units, if not even 70 to 80 units that would have went in there. That would have happened. So the TIF, the city borrowed against the future value of these properties, got money through a bond, used that money to purchase this property, got some money back when they sold the house to the Lund family. That was the meat of it. They received some money during Ike. They were able to put that into that account. Through Michelle, you can literally see every penny since 2007. And the goal was, oh no, someday something will come and we'll start to see our revenue come in. I don't believe that the forecast for the 70 homes touched this particular forecast. I actually use a specialist to help me come up with these numbers. I don't even use myself. I bring out an outside consultant who looks at the tax incentive, reads through all the contracts, and makes sure that these numbers are accurate. And they should exceed that. Those numbers, those dollars that could go in, could very well be utilized to make what we could make a particular eminent domain purchase, for example, in certain areas of the city that could help improve traffic flow. Those type of things.
Those monies go to the general fund.
Goes to the general fund, but I'm not going to be here in 2037, but you're not going to wait until 2037 to start spending the money, especially if we say, well, you know what, the interest on that debt's not that bad, and we only have X number of years. Let's just keep making payments. Let's not take that $350. Let's not take that $350 right away and pay off the loan in full. Let's keep making our loan payments as the money's rolling in, and let's use that to legitimately address a concern, because what we've done to improve the traffic flow and that basically goes back and impacts the residents up on 48 Butterworth is the investment we made in the traffic monitors. We spent $90,000 with radar units that feel and sense traffic coming and make adjustments. I know that it is bad today, but I know for a fact it was worse before that. They know, they speak to each other, they know when to hold a longer green. We know of other ways we can make it even better. There are significant costs involved. And if If this TIF is coming from that Butterworth area, obviously that would be a major consideration on how the funds could be spent.
The point is, as the property increases in value, the city receives funds from that
It keeps
TIF.
receiving, and then about every year, you get a little bit of like a raise, about a 0.5%. It'll keep going up, and as the taxes go up, we'll go up. I have us peaking at 148.23 in one particular year. That's in 2033. I have us at 112 in 2023, 60 in 2022. I'm sorry, 43 in 2022. And I will add one other item. So yes, that TIF has been waiting for somebody to do something, and it's taxing nothing.
And
So
and now this would start returning dividends.
this house gets built, it produces a taxable value, 30% of its value. Then another one gets built, and another one gets built,
Yeah.
and another one gets built. And then the city's TIF starts getting fed with money. More money than this, but because Little Miami gets funded too. I truly think that it could create the revenues that really can fix some of the bigger problems. And just for one record, because she asked the question, one of the first things I said to the developer, Mr. Burling, was please, when you start the zoning, the SPD process, please come in with a traffic study at the beginning. So I would anticipate that I requested that traffic study at the very beginning. But that's how TIF works.
Okay, and that TIF doesn't include also income tax revenue for people who buy those homes, correct?
Sure. As a whole, Michelle and I's typical rule is, because the city has reciprocity, anything we get in income tax is not anticipated, because if any residents up there live and work in Mason or Blue Ash because of the reciprocity, we like to think that's just anything additional. I will add, in true transparency, that they'll be on Western Water. They won't be on the city's water. That's in Western Water's district. So from us, we will supply their garbage service, and we will get about $30,000 in impact fees, which are for road and rec. Those need to be put back in that area. I can typically take the road and rec and use it into one fund, and that area, for example, those monies could go right back into the Butterworth.
And the other developments, without disclosing things that happened in private council sessions, were much higher density, much inferior products to what we're considering here.
I went on a field trip to one of them. That was offering considerably more than the 350, and I believe Tom and I didn't get out of the car.
It was that bad.
It was not something that these neighbors should have up there.
And the debt service to pay off this property has been eating a hole in the city's budget for 13 years now.
$50,000 a year.
Okay. And if you could just briefly explain why this, in your view, this needs to be an emergency ordinance as opposed to just the normal ordinance process.
Because I feel that I'm under the gun to get the zoning hearing process started. I'm under the gun if I will not begin construction on the sewer, because I'm not going to begin sewer construction until the city closes the deal, because that sewer construction includes a deal that the developer will put the assessment on. I have to look out for the city's funding that we will get our money back. So there's nothing that's going to go on with construction until all the zoning and everything's finished. But I would be totally putting the city behind the barrel if everything's approved and I just now begin the sewer design. That is a totally not a proper step for me. I need to move that process along. I will be hard pressed to have that sewer line up there by, I'm not going to say mid-2021. Okay. It's a very detailed process through the design and the bidding process and the construction. So,
and the city will be reimbursed for all of those costs.
Yep. The city will be reimbursed if it's 30 lots. Each home will pay $639 a annual assessment for 20 years.
Right.
If it's 35 lots, they'll pay $548 a lot.
And the total acreage per or unit per 25 to 20, almost 26 acres. It's almost 1 acre per unit.
It's 1.3.
1.3?
And that is
okay.
By far better than we've had in a long time. 1.35 acres per 1.35 units per acre is the number.
Okay. Thank you, Dave.
Yeah.
Mr. Blair.
Thank you for all this, Dave. It's very thorough, but I think for the benefit of the community that's here and going forward, can you sort of outline what the calendar looks like going forward, how long it's going to take? We've heard the community in some past meetings and have added, additional opportunities for public hearings. I want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to air their opinion and their views on the subject, but I don't want to feel like anybody's getting surprised. So if can you kind of lay out the calendar going forward?
Well, the first step would be that the CIC would meet and it basically execute the transfer of the property. I would then meet, I will basically be transferring the property from the city to the CIC. The CIC will be meeting and they'll be transferring the property, executing agreement to transfer the property to a organization called CW Butterworth LLC. That deal won't go through until the zoning and everything is accomplished. They have things that they want zoning. We have things that we want. I want verification that every lot's going to get assessed, knowing that we'll be made whole with the sewer. So, best case scenario, October, the property transfer and the property agreement will be executed. The November Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, they would meet with nothing more than this to determine whether or not it meets the requirements of an SPD. As soon as they do that, they hold their first public hearing to the public. What we used to do, when we changed this, was I would sit there and say, yeah, I think this meets the requirement of an SPD. Let's move forward with an SPD. We felt it was more important that the Planning and Zoning Commission, because there's certain things that have to be met to go through a SPD process. We do that for the SPD. That would be in November. I would anticipate they would then schedule a public hearing in about mid-November, prior to Thanksgiving, for the first public hearing by the P&Z. That's when the bargaining begins. Where's your entry gate going to go? I've already sent them, by the way, your right-of-ways need to be 60, your cul-de-sacs need to be 100. I've already showed them all of the widths that they need to meet, and meanwhile, they're working with Western Water separate from us. So by mid-November, I think the P&Z is holding their first public hearing. By early December, I'd say they have held their second public hearing. They're getting ready to make a recommendation to council. Remember, they don't vote on it. They simply make a recommendation. Tim is the P&Z liaison. So I would think by the time we come to council and say, here's the recommendation, council then sets a public hearing at a future date, which would probably be maybe the next meeting. Council then can, there's all these findings. The P&Z, to be honest with you, would likely linger into early January, because by no means are they not going to want X and Y to come back to them. In reality, I think it will come back to council at sometime in probably early to late January, which means council wouldn't have their first public hearing until February. So now we're at half November, half December, half January, half February. By the time council asks for various requirements, and there's an additional public hearing needed, I think we'll be into February, March. I'm guessing I can actually do this a lot better with a calendar in front of me, but I would say best case scenario, council does 2 readings on the legislation creating an SPD. Because one of the different things about an SPD is there's the P&Z has to go through the SPD process, but then after council reviews it, it goes back to P&Z because they have to do more public hearings because it's also creating a map change on our map. So we have a map with all the different colors for zoning, and a lot of them say SPD. So it goes back to P&Z, and P&Z then holds more public hearings to make formal map changes. All totaled, it goes P&Z, council, P&Z, and that typically takes about 6 months. That I believe would start if they were able to get their paperwork in, it would start in sometime in early November.
And so we're not making a decision go, no go until sometime
February. I think it'll come back to you, and then you're going to send it back to P&Z. January, February, it'll come back to you, I would think, and then you got to send it back to P&Z.
Okay, so the public is going to have plenty of time.
goodness. We added a whole nother hearing
That's
to that
exactly
process.
right. Okay, thank you.
All you're doing tonight is telling me, give this property to CIC. CIC will be presented an agreement that has a lot of details. Details that they want, details that we want. No money's going to change hand until everything has been sold. Yes, the input from the public, the SPD process, I know might sound convoluted, but if you're a resident, an adjoining property owner who is going to receive a notification on this, you are much better served from a public input standpoint by going through an SPD rather than us saying, oh, it meets residential medium density, we can just do a straight zone change. It just is. I can only say it because I've gone through it once. So.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else?
Kathy.
Mr. Ori?
Yeah, I just wanted to address the two speakers tonight. Both of you talked about solving the traffic issue, and that gives us almost 2 years to solve it. But at the same time, the developers starting to look at it, and I have taken it upon myself to look at it, although I'm not a traffic engineer, but I've come up with some ideas already. So we're working on it, and it's we know that is one of the crucial changes that needs to be made in Loveland. So just to let you know. Thanks.
Anyone else? Am I missing someone? Mr. Bateman?
Thank you. So as this is sort of our first opportunity to, address the public with regards to this proposal, I just had a couple of questions and really, for one, going back to the original plan with the summit point, which you're referencing in the minutes here, where the Crane property is developed. I'm sorry, I get them. Is that the Crane parcel is developed and the city parcel is sort of recreation.
Passive recreation.
Right. I'm wondering if, as that project fell through, probably due to the sewer and the infrastructure problems, as you've indicated in here, currently this project, how, inextricably linked are the sewer, the Crane, and the Crispin parcels? Is it truly no Crispin property, no project, no sewer, no project, or?
So if the city would not be participating and would only be selling access rights through our property, which obviously is going to be insignificant, and we were only going to sell access through our property, you would, I guess, potentially get a 20-home homeorama. I don't know how much we're willing to contribute to sewer for that project. We were getting no water from this, limited income tax, and now a much reduced TIF. I don't know. I always was courteous and stayed in contact with the Crane. They would get frustrated, but I would tell them, I'm sorry, you're sending people our way with products that don't pass the sniff test. You don't live, you're not here, not dealing with it, and I think at some point they got it. And but obviously anyone we've ever spoke to has also spoke with the Crane family because of the access. You really can't get into the Crane farm without coming through the city's property. And if that was all we were ever to be, yes, obviously the city wouldn't be getting $350,000. We would pay back the debt service and the money towards the city over a much longer period of time. Yeah, I don't know about what passive recreation means outside of walking trails. I don't know if those people would flock to that area to use that as a walking trail. We certainly wouldn't want to do something like soccer fields or something like that are going to bring a tremendous amount of people. In an effort to make the most financial sense for the city, my opinion was that the city property had to be part of the project from a development standpoint, not just an access standpoint.
And so that would also mean that as a result, by combining them and by creating the assessment for the assistance with the sewer, what's happening is now the city is able to flip the investment and over the long term bring revenue back into the city, and therefore the taxpayers are no longer in debt due to the project, but actually reaping the benefits of a strategic development project.
Yes. Yeah, the developer originally did, I wanted 10 years on the sewer assessment. The developer asked for 20. This type of home, this type of development, high HOA fees. Obviously, we're going to have a lighting district in there. My opinion was that's fine, but it's airtight that we'll get reimbursed through that development. It's all we have up there. We're not the water. Western Water's the water. So.
Thank you. Another question I had was relative to, again, going back to the original intent, the first park in Warren County, that kind of thing. And I recently was visiting a city and in a suburban area down in North Carolina, and was taken with how it was laid out to have sort of an incorporated green space and walkway within the subdivision. Would that be something that could be sort of lobbied for through the SPD process, and would we be able to somehow create sort of a, whether it's sidewalks as like the bare minimum versus walking trails or something that would meander through a wooded area or something like that? Could that be at least discussed and interpreted through the development process in a community-led sort of way?
Yeah, the project includes sidewalks on one side of the street. It includes, obviously, 60-foot right-of-way. Of the proposals that we've received over the years, when I would tell them, is there any way you can figure in a park, I typically got the area under the power lines where they were going to put their detention basin, and that was our park. They are required to do detention, so let's put it under the power lines and put a walking trail around it, and that was our park. One of those offers included $50,000 for the city and still had a tremendous amount of units on the both properties. I didn't see from a financial standpoint how this was going to work for the city. The Crane family would have sold it. Crane family technically could have figured out a way to put a septic system up there, figured out a way to cut a gravel road up to it and put one big mansion up there. But from a financial standpoint, for the city, I would have failed. I mean, I would have failed. Not with this type of hole. That would have been a failure. Mm-hmm. To find something that does not have a negative impact and maybe conversely has a positive impact on the neighboring subdivisions, to me, I feel like, knowing what I've been dealing with 2014, this is the best product I think I can bring forward.
Okay. Lastly, I just want to echo Mr. Ori's sentiments about the traffic concerns. This has been a couple of instances now where I've heard folks, particularly from Warren County and the subdivisions, complain about the difficulty in navigating their day-to-day, whether it's going to work through Loveland or trying to go shopping. And so I also will echo Mr. Ori in saying this is something I think all of us on council are committed to solving, and we recognize it as being a prime challenge for our residents, and it has lasting repercussions with people not wanting to put up with the hassle and complaining about not wanting to enjoy the all the great opportunities we have to enjoy ourselves in downtown. The thing that make downtown Loveland so fun shouldn't be a reason for people to avoid it. So I think we are going to continue to work on that. I also agree with the bike safety issues as well on 48. I think it can be really, really challenging with especially large groups. So anything we might be able to do to either go in contact with those cycling clubs or do anything with bike lanes or something to try to either reduce or encourage alternate routes rather than going right up that state route for their club rides. So anyway, that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, just to sort of sum up, I mean, I'm but one vote like everyone else, but just sort of where my head is in my short time on council, the number of projects, the number of potential developments that were brought to us that we, as Mr. Kennedy said, rejected outright because we are trying to look out for the individuals that live in Warren County and the neighborhoods up there. I mean, many. There have been many times we've met with developers and had to sit there and say, we don't like your product. We're not doing that. That's the too high density, rentals, whatever. We turned away time after time after time. And if the right project didn't come along, we wouldn't be sitting here. But we have to, and I get it, I understand the traffic. I agree with, I do understand with Ms. Wiggand, what you said about traffic. We've heard that before. There are things that we are looking at that we can do, and this would give us some money to do some of those things, hopefully. But, you know, we're spending close to $50,000 a year on that debt service on that product, on that property up there. And as I said, we're willing to do that when we didn't have a good alternative. But we have to balance really the interests of the entire city, and that would include our general fund. And good heavens, we go from over $800,000 out to, by the time we pay ourselves back for all of that, about $1.5 million into the city fund to do what we need to do on projects. So it's as most decisions that we have to make, it's a balance. And I think this is the best deal, the best project we're ever going to get, short of doing nothing up there. And with the amount we owe, that just, to me, is not, I'd find hard if everything works out with this and everything goes the way that we're hoping it goes. I just think this is going to be, in the long run, a good project for the city as a whole, and we'll do our best to address the issues that were raised, and we would love to find long-term solutions to our traffic problem, believe me, and gives us some money to start to do that. So that's where my head is on it. But again, we're at the very beginning. We're not even making any decisions today other than to pass it off to CIC. But I do thank you all for being here and the ones that spoke and for listening. Anyone else? All right, can we have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Mr. Ori, is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Blair, call the roll, please.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Mr. Phelps?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Weisgerber? Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman? Yes. Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right, next item is the second reading on an ordinance. Go ahead and read the ordinance.
Ordinance authorizing the city manager to enter into a lease agreement with OMA Real Estate 4 for 2 garage bays on property located at the rear of 210 Harrison Avenue, Loveland, Ohio, also known as the Bronner Garage.
All right, you do have a red line version of just the lease agreement. I believe this was Mr. Butler's suggestion. It is in Section 2B, where we changed the language from, you can read it yourselves, but where it said municipal use only, it now says any use. We do not need to have a motion to amend that, I am told, because it's just an attachment, correct? Okay. Any further comment on this ordinance?
Kathy.
Mr. Ori?
Section 5, the option to renew, it's in there for an additional 10 years, but there's no language as far as increase in rent. I don't know if we want to do that or not. It is a net lease, so they're taking care of all the repairs and maintenance and everything, but to pay $175 for 10 years is a good deal. To continue it on for 20 or 30 years, we may want to talk about it, I guess.
Yeah, I would think, would we, Mr. Bonnet, at that point, when you get to the 10-year point, if they want to re-up, we don't have to let them re-up unless they increase their monthly payment, right?
Well, there's actually a provision in Section 5 that says, except that monthly rent during the option period shall be mutually agreeable to the landlord and tenant. So we could increase it by agreement.
Yeah.
So there is language in there that allows us to increase it after the 10
I
years.
didn't see that.
It is in there. I actually read it too, so it's there.
Yep,
All right.
mutually agreed. So.
Anything else? Mr. Butler?
Yeah, as I mentioned at the last meeting when this was a first reading, I certainly defer to the city's position, the city manager and Public Works as to whether that space is needed or not. Certainly if that's their position, that's fine. But a 10-year lease in Nisbet Park, on the periphery of Nisbet Park, I think is not in the city's interest, especially a 10-year lease which freezes rent for those 10 years. the position that, or the provision that Joe just mentioned is actually for a rent increase in the renewal period, not in the current 10-year period. So as I mentioned at the last hearing or at the last meeting, if this is a market-based lease now, 10 years from now, it will certainly not be a market-based lease. And I understand having the option of termination helps, and I appreciate that, but I just believe that there should be some provision in the lease for rent escalation at least after the first 2 years or so, and I'd be much more comfortable with a 5-year as opposed to a 10-year lease in a prime area of city development. I think we're tying our hands, so I just have those comments.
Anyone else? Mr. Phelps?
Just in terms of being a municipal owner, I guess the city is not in the business of renting or leasing property as a general rule. We're not a for-profit private enterprise in which I could see where it would be only responsible for a for-profit organization to seek to have escalation of rent possibility. But I don't know, as a public entity, I'm not sure that's something that should drive whether or not we enter into this deal. That's just my 2 cents.
Anyone else? Mr. Ori?
I had a discussion with Tim last night, and just to reiterate, this is a net lease. So, and it actually says that the tenant shall not call upon the landlord to make any such repairs or replacements. So if the roof goes bad, the siding goes bad, the garage door breaks, they pay for it. So I told you, Tim, that I was okay with the flat rate because of that clause. So.
Anyone else? Mr. Bateman?
Yeah, I'll just add, this is such an interesting piece of city property, actually. You know, the fact that it is sort of tied to, a house that is one of the, more interesting cottage homes there on that cul-de-sac. I think it's unique. I'm not exactly sure how the city came into, possession of this particular property, but I think that it does show a sign of goodwill to our resident that's owning that new facility, to sort of give them the option to have a storage garage in that. So I'm in agreement that the terms are fine. I just think it's one of the more odd little holdings that the city has. So I agree with Mr. Phelps in the sense that if it's works for us and works for the resident, then it's probably a good deal for both.
If I could just add one thing, I would add that to me the difference in this product is that in one swoop with this carrot, because it was an incentive, as is many incentives as the city gives for a commercial enterprise. I met a goal of the downtown plan and a council goal, which was promote Airbnb type short-term rentals in our downtown district. So that was what I was mostly doing. The ability to get one unit back was what we felt would help us with my goal next year, which is a seasonal worker who is stationed in the downtown district. That seasonal worker would be the guy who runs the water truck, and now I can keep the water truck parked down here, right in the access, ready to go, and he's all the tools. So that was mostly my goal with it. Mrs. Breed, she owns a quilter studio up on Loveland, Madeira, West Loveland and Loveland, Madeira. She is all in on this product, and she's going to bring a neat crowd to this downtown on a regular basis, and I just think it could blossom into quite a few things. So she's well invested. I agree with what Tim said. I think after the 10 years, we certainly can escalate this. I think the ability to change it from municipal use to any use makes a lot of sense. Our hands aren't tied if something comes in. But I really did see it as sort of a perk for her as a new business, because she's not a resident. She herself will not be living in that property. She is running a Airbnb, which I guess are very popular. I did not realize until some of the ladies here at staff said that these Airbnbs where you quilt and do all of this are a big deal. Mandy, who works for us, said, oh, there are some where you scrapbook all weekend. Right, Cece? That must be the thing. So I just thought from going from a straight residence to something that's going to bring people into town, I actually lowered the price from what it originally was to be in full transparency. I just thought, I'm getting one back, you're bringing in people. We settled on this price, and that was pretty much what we ended up with. Sorry.
Don't be sorry.
Tim wanted to, but that was it.
Mr. Butler.
Yeah, and I understand Mr. Phelps and Mr. Bateman's position, respect that, but I think we also, to the citizens of the city of Loveland, generally, everyone, if this is a market-based rent in 2020, it's not going to be a market-based rent in 2030, 10 years from now. So I oppose it for that reason. I don't oppose the concept of this person having the ability to rent the space. Again, if I defer to Dave's and the Public Works position, if they don't need the property, but I think we owe it to the citizens to drive an appropriate rent. I don't think this is. Thank you.
Anyone else? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Phelps?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Weisgerber?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
No.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Pardon me?
Yes.
Yes. Ordinance 96 is adopted by a vote of 6-1.
Read the next ordinance, please.
Ordinance to make revisions to appropriations for expenditures for the City of Loveland, State of Ohio during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2020.
Any comments or questions? Call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Weisgerber?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Mr. Phelps?
Yes.
Ordinance 97 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
All right. You want to just explain these? Or did we? Yeah.
Michelle's got this.
Michelle, there you are. Go ahead.
This is just an annual thing we do. This is a follow-up at the next step. After the tax budget, we get the tax budget back along with these rates and amounts. And we just need to certify those. These are the amounts that we will put in the budget. There was about a 1% increase over the prior year. And we use these in the budget, and we're about spot on this year. So it's just an annual thing we do and then certify it back to the county.
Okay. Anybody have any questions, comments? Mr. Butler?
Yes, is this your last appearance before council?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, I was going to
I got lots of
fetch you, I was going to fetch you, but I'll hold off.
Unfortunately, you're going to see me a lot more in the next few months.
Okay, very good.
She's not leaving us before the budget is taken care of. Mr. Blair?
I know we're going to see a lot more of you. I'm just going to tell you that you were dumped into this role rather unceremoniously, and you took it on with great good humor and great efficiency and great expertise. And there's an ephemeral advantage that some companies and organizations have, and it's called institutional memory. And we will be poorer for your loss of that, our loss of that institutional memory. I'm just saying thank you.
Thank you.
Here, here. All right. Can you read the resolution, please?
Resolution accepting the amounts and rates is determined by the Budget Commission of Hamilton County, Ohio, and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 5705.34.
Any comments or questions on the legislation? Call the roll, please.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Mr. Phelps?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Weisgerber? Resolution 98 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Mr. Kennedy?
So it's that time of year again, sort of like it is for Michelle. It's this time of year again as we prepare to submit our Ohio Public Works Commission SCIP, our State Capital Improvement Program applications. As always, we are submitting applications that we know may not well be funded. The three applications this year are a little bit unique. Main and Chestnut, that's mostly the Main Street water line, but because it would be Main and Chestnut, This is Main all the way to the foot of the hill by the post office, Chestnut. We've also realized that we could get some additional points by adding the traffic signal project that I've been pushing for a while at the corner of West Main and Wall Street as we begin our process of trying to add the street furniture. So the Main and Chestnut water line project is also stormwater, it is also traffic signal, and it is also preemption, which is perfect. So what we're adding to this is a couple things that we've done with every traffic signal as we've worked our way around town. One was a camera for the comm center. One was those white panels that long have since replaced the things you drove up on that see the traffic coming. You should never be on West Loveland. It drives me crazy. And get a red light when there's nobody on Wall Street. Drives me crazy. Well, this is what that would do. That would be the dominant street, and until someone pulls up on Wall Street, traffic flows better. It's all part of that, what we've been working on as far as downtown traffic dispersing. Well, we're working on that. We also want to add the antique style. I've so far spoke to 2 of the property owners because we will be on their property a little bit more, so I'm working my way around the cul-de-sac. That is our number 1 project, and we feel good about it. Our number 2 project is actually listed as number 3, is the West Loveland Paxton Bridge railing replacement. This is not a grant that we're submitting for funding. We're submitting this grant to support Hamilton County's grant to replace, finally, completely and totally replace those decrepit sidewalks that are on that bridge with conduit underneath the bridge now. That's the biggest issue. There is a myriad of wires, and it's like Tetris inside that concrete. And they'll rip them all out, redo all the conduit, and the city was given an opportunity by the Hamilton County engineer to say, hey, Dave, you want your same old ugly steel ones? Because that's all you're going to get? Or would the city like to put in some money and put something in very attractive? And you really might want to do it because we're going to be raising the concrete. If you do that and your railings, you can bring that back down because you're going to be losing the view. So we're all in. We'll never get this opportunity again. We're putting in 50. Our application is a 0 request because we're simply supporting Hamilton County's getting extra points, supplying them additional local match. And I do want to say, Kathy, your calls to the Hamilton County engineer really helped. This has really been a mess. I refuse to go to Union Savings Banks because those ladies know who I am, and they would not. They like to walk into downtown, and they're right. They've gotten to be unsafe. They are unsafe. So I'm looking forward to going back to the bank. The East Loveland Avenue improvement is a project that was going to be done in conjunction with Claremont County, Jeremy Evans, Claremont County engineer. As you know, the bridge past the nature preserve is getting ready to be completely and totally replaced. Cindy, doing what Cindy always does, is working, thinking through how, and we actually met out there with Ott as far as how his emergency vehicles go. Our goal is to take East Loveland and improve the drainage and sidewalks up towards 5th Street. With that, fix the storm drainage and get prepared for the bridge by taking out that turn. That project is not going to score at all well because Claremont County has moved their property to 2022. Cindy likes to go ahead and submit the applications because you get good feedback. It was that good feedback she got that made her realize that we could add the traffic signal and get extra points. So that is pretty much the 3 projects. If we get the East Loveland project, if we get the Main and Chestnut project, that will be one heck of a project for the city because the paving is included in that project, water main, storm drain repairs, traffic signal upgrades at Wall and West Loveland, and new white panels where Main and Love of Madeira meet. It is an all-encompassing project, and she's really done a great job on that. So that is our number 1 project. Miami View storm drain might have been if we didn't just fund it recently. You all accepted a loan from them.
All right. Any questions, comments? Mr. Phelps?
Mr. Kennedy, this is the area where you've had complaints from property owners about the condition of the road.
Yeah, it's a running joke with one resident. He sees the truck and he says, "This year, Mr. Kennedy," I said, "Nope. He said, "But we have the worst street in the city." and he's right, but they also are the worst water mains. So once we get that fixed, that road will get completely done, paving, and curb work. As a side note, I didn't mention, it's a 20, if this fails, which we hope it doesn't, the traffic signal project at West Loveland and Wall is still scheduled to happen. That was pulled, it was a COVID cut. It was a COVID cut this year. So that we plan to move forward with that project. We hope it's as part of this one.
Anyone else? Mr. Butler?
Dave, I understand the Main Street part of the project. The Chestnut Street part of the project, does any of the proposal include that area from the intersection back towards the abandoned church, or it does?
Yeah, the Chestnut repair is there's a stub that goes in. These mains go back to the late 1800s, early 1900s. There's a stub that feeds that church from the side, and I believe the Main Street School and another one. So we would replace that dead end line, and then Main Street would go all the way across Loveland Madeira Road. We're not doing any improvements on Wall Street, and Main Street would also get all new storm drain upgrades. Their storm drain's falling apart.
Would that then allow any kind of work on that abandoned church project too, or not? That would be separate?
There's water lines down, all the way down Chestnut.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? All right, let's go ahead and read the first resolution then.
Resolution authorizing the city manager to prepare and submit an application to participate in the Ohio Public Works Commission state capital improvement and/or local transportation improvement programs, and to execute contracts as required for the West Loveland Bridge railing replacement project.
All right, any comment on the resolution itself? Mr. Butler?
I'm sorry, I should have asked this before. So when we submit this to the state of Ohio, we designate priority 1, 2, and 3?
It's in the application.
Okay, so they know this is our first priority, this is our second,
it's like
third.
page 2.
Okay, thank you.
All right, call the roll, please.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Mr. Phelps?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Weisgerber?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Resolution 99 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Read the next resolution, please.
Resolution authorizing the city manager to prepare and submit an application to participate in the Ohio Public Works Commission state capital improvement and/or local transportation improvement programs, and to execute contracts as required for the Main and Chestnut Street Waterline project.
Any comment? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Mr. Phelps?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Weisgerber?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Resolution 100 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Read the next one, please.
Resolution authorizing the city manager to prepare and submit an application to participate in the Ohio Public Works Commission state capital improvement and/or local transportation improvement programs, and to execute contracts as required for the East Loveland Avenue improvement projects.
Any comment? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Mr. Phelps?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Weisgerber?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Resolution 101 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Mayor. This is my third time coming to you with regards to CARES Act funds. So the federal government, as part of the CARES Act, established $150 billion to be distributed to municipalities and governments across the nation. Of that amount, Hamilton County received $142 million. Part of that $142 million, the county commissioners have created as part of their portion, the Hamilton County CARES Act plan. Of that plan, there's $25 million that is used for assistance to municipalities and townships and can be dispersed for the use of EMS and public safety expenses. If approved, or if council consent is given, the city would be eligible for $147,979, and that amount's been derived from what is called the local government formula, and that's how they've calculated that. So part of the CARES Act, the County CARES Act plan is that the city has to be authorized to enter into an agreement. So what the city would be asking for from the council is that they authorize the city manager and direct the city manager to enter into agreement with Hamilton County, utilizing the CARES Act plan funds that we are eligible for, and then after that we would submit the agreement and some of our requested expenses for reimbursement that would come back to the city that were used for COVID-related expenses.
All right. Anybody have any questions, comments? Mr. Butler?
So Tom, this is, I think, 27,000 that's proposed for this expenditure?
Well, it's not an expenditure. I apologize, I wasn't very clear. It's not an expenditure. This program's reimbursement.
Oh, okay.
So what we had already expensed in EMS or public safety personnel costs.
Oh, so we're applying for reimbursement.
Or not even necessarily personnel. It could be anything, to be honest with you. Yeah, we would be applying for personnel or for reimbursement for stuff that we had already
very good.
spent.
Okay, thank you.
But to do so, we need to enter an agreement first, and so
Got it.
we're asking for authorization to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? All right, you do have a red line version of the resolution in front of you, and all it does is change Hamilton County Board of Trustees to commissioners. So first thing we need is a motion to amend the resolution in line with what the red line version says.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Mr. Phelps seconded. Can call the roll on that, please?
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Mr. Phelps? Yes. Vice Mayor Weisgerber? Yes. Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman? Yes. Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
You read the resolution.
A resolution authorizing and directing the city manager to execute an agreement with Hamilton County utilizing the Hamilton County CARES Act plan for reimbursement of eligible EMS and public safety expenses incurred during the performance period of March 1st, 2020 through December 30th, 2020 related to the public health emergency with respect to COVID-19.
Any comment on the resolution as amended? All right, let's call the roll on the resolution as amended.
Mr. Phelps?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Weisgerber? Yes. Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman? Yes. Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Mr. Phelps?
Mr.
Did I call you
Phelps?
twice?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Resolution 102 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Mayor. As I expressed earlier, the last two council meetings, I've come with you requesting authorization for certain expenditures. This time is no different. Specifically, Resolution 2020-95, as approved of the last council meeting. This particular item is very, very similar, which we're asking for the authorization to execute an agreement for the installation of touchless plumbing fixtures in City Hall, or similar to City Hall, but for the Nisbet Park, Phillips Park, Lever Park, and McCoy Parks. So this would include the drinking fountains, the restroom facilities, the sinks, all of those utilities would be touchless. In the analysis, as part of Exhibit B, there's a couple of cool things that I'd like to point out with this. The faucets have no handles and no turn or push buttons. The faucets are battery powered, and you can get around 8,000 cycles per month. What I like about them, they have kind of a gooseneck, so as you put your hands underneath them, that you won't come in contact with any of the equipment, and they're splash proof. Toilets will be equipped with similar things. They're battery operated. The batteries last for about 3 years. The urinals will be hardwired, with the drinking fountains being equipped with touchless sensors. Each item proposed here is also ADA compliant. And then separate from this, but something that I'd like to point out is we are also looking to install electric towel and soap dispensers as part of the process, and is currently being in the process of being procured, but we're pretty confident that'll fall below the city manager's threshold and won't be incorporated in part of this, or probably likely come to council later on. Now, in accordance with the city's procurement policy, the city staff has acquired two quotes, one from BME Inc., as explained in Exhibit C, and two from Co-Construction Group, Exhibit D. The scope of work includes the replacement of those fixtures, as I expressed, for the 4 parks. The first quote from BME came in at $27,900. The second came in from Coke Construction Group at $50,111.95. The proposed project meets all the requirements of the CARES Act and HB 481 and falls in the performance period of March 1st and December 30th, 2020. So with that, I would ask that the council please authorize the city manager to enter an agreement with BME Inc. in the amount of $27,900 for the repurposing of the restroom facilities at Nisbet Park, Phillips Park, Lever Park, and McCoy Park.
Any questions for Mr. Smith? Mr. Ori?
Mr. Smith, just one on the drinking fountain. I just happened to notice that there's a bottle filling station option. Are we considering that?
That was an option. We're not considering that at this time.
You know what the additional cost on that was? Or?
I don't know what the additional costs are. One of the reasons, you know, just thinking out loud off the top of my head, was that we have 3 additional drinking fountains that we're putting at the parks that are not part of the restroom facility itself that do have bottle.
Oh, okay. Filling.
The fillers. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Butler?
So, Tom, this all looks in order and no issues with it, but on page 60 and 61 of our pack, or 61 and 62 of our packet, there's a review or suggestions by the state of Ohio as to other ways in which CARES funding can be used. Has the city, have you and Dave and the staff reviewed that and had any thoughts? Because this is 27,000, we've got 145,000, I think, coming our way from the state of Ohio.
Well, right now in our funds, we've got quite a bit more than that. Actually.
Okay, so even more.
Oh yeah.
So okay, I guess I would just urge and I know you're doing it, but that looks like a pretty comprehensive list of other options for communities in terms of using CARES funds. So hopefully this council can have an opportunity to review and consider uses of funds in one of those directions.
If I may, Councilmember Butler, respond to that. We did look at that. I put this in here as a criteria. This is what we go off of as we use for our eligible expenses. In the past 2 requests we've had were specifically kind of the city hall and kind of catering around city hall.
Right.
This time we wanted to do something more that was more for public benefit, so that's why we elected this project.
Certainly. Thank you.
Mr. Phelps?
I just wanted to applaud the fact that I think we've had deferred maintenance and improvement to our public restrooms in our parks, especially Nisbet. So I know a lot of things have happened. We painted it. We've got an Eagle Scout improving it. I'm glad these fixtures are going to come in. And again, I'm just happy to know that we're getting to a point where we can be somewhat proud of our restroom facilities. I don't know if you've ever been in Mason's Parks. Their restrooms are incredible. I think we're getting there, and I'm glad to see it.
Yep.
Mr. Kennedy?
I would add one thing, Ted. The 2021 budget includes upgrade of the flooring in Nisbet Park, $7,000 for commercial floor upgrade in that park. So that's another addition that will happen in 21. That's not a COVID thing, but so that will be a nice addition.
And it won't affect the installation of this equipment won't affect the integrity of that flooring project.
Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Blair.
I think it's fortunate that coincidentally we're flush with cash for this kind of undertaking, and I'm looking forward to seeing it completed.
How long did it take you to come up with that?
I'll hit him.
Anyone else? All right. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Read the resolution.
Resolution authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into an agreement with BME Inc. for the repurposing of the restroom facilities at Nesbitt Park, Phillips Park, Lever Park, and McCoy Park with the installation of touchless plumbing fixtures to further assist in the elimination and prevention of the public health emergency with respect to COVID-19.
Any comment on the legislation? Call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Weisgerber? Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Mr. Phelps?
Yes.
Resolution 103 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
All right. We've already gone through your memo, Mr. Kennedy, why don't you go ahead and, well, actually, we have a redlined ordinance at the table that everyone should have, which just takes out little language in that first whereas clause. So if we could have a motion to adopt the changes on the redlined version.
Second.
Mr. Ori moved, Mr. Blair seconded. Call the roll, please.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman? Yes. Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Mr. Phelps?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Weisgerber? Yes. Motion carries 7-0.
All right, why don't you go ahead and read the ordinance?
Ordinance transferring the real property on Butterworth Road located in the city of Loveland, Warren County, Ohio, to the Community Improvement Corporation of Loveland and declaring an emergency.
All right, does anyone have any further comment with regard to this, this ordinance? All right, did you have your hand up? Yes,
Yeah.
Mr. Butler.
Yeah, for those of us who have participated in numerous sessions, closed-door sessions, we know that there have been any number of proposals for use of this land, which both the city manager and the city council concluded were just not appropriate for that property and for the citizens of the city of Loveland. And this proposal, which we're looking at, we know this is the first step in the process, that there will be a long opportunity, as Mr. Blair noted, for public input, any number of public hearings, consideration of the Planning and Zoning Commission, but the use of this land for this purpose and under these circumstances presents a tremendous opportunity for the city of Loveland to A, retire the debt, which we've been carrying now for 13 years, and B, generate a significant amount of revenue for the city, which can be used for projects to help us address the traffic issues, particularly in Warren County coming into the city of Loveland. And I think this council is committed to reviewing, addressing, and doing what we can to fix those. So I support it. Think it's the right project at the right time, and this council needs to be committed to using the funds in an appropriate way, and I know we will.
Any other comment? All right, let's call the roll on the ordinance as amended.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Mr. Phelps?
Yes.
Excuse me, Vice Mayor Weisgerber? Yes. Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Ordinance 104 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
All right, Mr. Kennedy?
I feel like I've pretty much beat this topic to death, and we still only have one person in the audience, which was same as when I did my public presentation. At the end of the day, this is simply a modification to the minimum usage permitted by this permitted. We've ran significant testing on the product, and at the end of the day, it's a way for the city to generate much needed revenue in the water op and water cap funds without having any massive impact to any individual person. No unit or no single-family home or any unit within a multifamily will exceed $7. The rate structure will the rate will stay the same. It's still $14.18, but rather than $14.18 for 4,000 gallons, it's $14.18 for 2,240. And because we didn't change that rate or the per gallon rate, the window is $7 maximum. We felt, myself, Michelle, and Lisa, our utility billing clerk, that we wanted to modify the ordinance, which typically read this much for us starting the minimum gallons, and then the lump sum for the next 1,000. That's not really true, because if you go currently 4,010 gallons, for example, you don't pay that whole lump sum. You pay the per gallon rate for those 10 gallons on top of the 14.18. That's why the ordinance may look a little bit different than we've done in the past. We can confirm with Joe that that is proper. It's actually just more accurate for the residents. And then also, as you'll note in my memo, I do not touch the out-of-city They're addressed in another location, and I do not address the Brandywine 20% increase because that is through a legal action. So this is what you're passing is only for the city inside users because the other two factor off of that. They're based on this rate. So that is why there is no change for those rates. I'm looking at this will be in place for a full year. I feel pretty strong that our estimate, with not a single new home coming on the system, will be around $272,000 in additional revenue. When Michelle and I were doing a forecast for the 21 water fund with minimal water programs in place, small equipment purchase, and only a water main replacement up at the bridge by East Loveland that we have to do to get ready for the bridge replacement, we were going to finish in the hole at $9,602. My estimation now is that we will finish on the good side of the ledger at $263,074.
All right. Any comment? Yes, Mr. Blair.
Dave, did you receive any input from the community or concerns?
What good, actually. I received, so we ran it in, we made a movie out of the PowerPoint and I put it on the website, did a news flash. I received questions. We also ran it in the newsletter, and I received a couple emails that said, Mr. Kennedy, I took the time to read your proposal. Thank you very much. Seems fair. We had one from a resident who was, Michelle, you helped me out with that one. That was more related to how is his units treated and how will his rates be treated. We answered that back. I feel that given this current time and day that COVID, I feel like those that wanted to see it saw it, and those that took the time. I even got comments from Kroger's. So Mrs. Underkoffer told me what she thought while I was checking out. So, you know how she likes to make sure she gets her point across.
Well, I think that's great. I mean, it sounds
I just think at the end of the day,
sounds generally positive. I think it's a great help, and it's a good use of PR resources to put it out there that way.
Yeah, I think
that helped.
Okay,
thank you.
And it's only a first reading for tonight.
Vice Mayor?
Appreciate it. Dave also presented this to the Finance Commission, went through the pitch in detail, and was well received by the Finance Commission as well with regards to how well it's laid out and the logic behind it. So that helped answer the question about who else has seen it. So that helped quite a bit.
Any other comment? All right, go ahead and do the first reading.
Ordinance amending Loveland Code of Ordinance, Chapter 111, Schedule of Fees, Fines, and Other Charges to revise fees charged for water utility services.
Thank you. All right, David, Council Manick?
Real simple, just felt enough need to update council on the sale of the 2 parcels that you transferred to the CIC. Those were sold on August 27th. Both the CIC president and myself were on hand. Those projects were closed. Totals net to the city, to the CIC was $18,612. That went to the CIC because City Council passed Ordinance 2020-75 at their August 25th meeting. The CIC is actively preparing a grant program to help support home improvements within the Heights area. We're going to designate certain streets to get more bang for the buck. Those streets will be offered this grant program. At the same time, the city is changing out street poles, new signs, working with Duke to make sure the lighting is working, and then moving to the next street. So it's a good program. They got that money to spend. I will, just to have it out there, there has been interest in looking at Robinson Park as a way to generate some more revenue for the CIC to continue this program if these go like hotcakes. So we'll be discussing that at a future meeting.
All right. Any questions, comments for Dave? All right, there are various committee minutes and reports. Does anybody have any comments, questions on any of those? All right, city council reports, comments, anything for the good of the order? Mr. Butler?
Yeah, I have, the hour's getting late, and we've addressed a lot of heavy things today, but I would ask perhaps at the next meeting, session of council, that we again readdress the issue of whether ordinance 2020-41 still needs to be continued. That is, does the city need to continue to operate under a state of emergency? And I would ask, in your consideration, just segregate the issues relating to what we hear in the news about the pandemic and so forth, and the purpose of the ordinance 157-.01, et cetera, at SEC, as to the effective government of the city of Loveland. Have we been able to effectively govern as a community, and has the emergency ordinance really made any difference in terms of our effective governance? So I would ask that hopefully at the next council meeting we can address that and have a full discussion of that. The second, I would add, and this is more light, I think looking around this table, there's probably 6 or 7 of you that had the same reaction that I did yesterday when I saw the internet flash over that Joe Morgan passed away. Knowing that several of you are from this area, grew up at about the time of the Big Red Machine, and how integral Joe Morgan was to the success of that organization, and what a mainstay he's been in the city of Cincinnati as a businessman and in the philanthropic community. So I guess I'm just passing along, my sense, and I'm confident that City Council will feel the same way, expressing its sympathies to the Morgan family and our gratitude for the joy that he brought so many of us growing up as a key member of the Big Red Machine, and how important that was to Southwest Ohio. So I didn't want that event of his passing to go unnoticed by this council. I know all of you felt the same way, but I guess I'm the one who brought it up. So thank you.
Anyone else? Have a motion to adjourn? No one wants to adjourn?
So
We
moved.
can talk about Joe Morgan a little longer if you want. I'll move to adjourn.
Okay. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Mr. Phelps?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Weisgerber?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
There, Rob.
Bye all.